Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SockWeb Studios. Visit online at sockwebstudios.com for all your needs, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We're here with amazing Lea, who's an author coming from a literary background, as her uncle co-authored a well-respected liturgical book in the 70s, and grandmother was an nationally published Turkish author as well. And she also wrote some short stories since as a little girl, and entered the University of Michigan and traveled all over the world, and economic professor in St. Louis. And her new book tells the story of interracial adoption in the U.S. and from the perspective of a white mother adopting a black son, and finds she has no idea what she's doing. The book is called Seeking Forgiveness. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful downtown St. Louis, the author of the book, Seeking Forgiveness, and coming from literary background, just some amazing genes, and economic professor at University of Missouri, St. Louis. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Lea Rachel. Lea, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Lea. So you're an author coming from a literary background. Your uncle, co-author, a well-respected liturgical book in the 70s, and your grandmother is an internationally published Turkish author, and you wrote short stories since you were a little girl, and you went to University of Michigan, and you traveled all over the world, like Thailand, Turkey, Peru, China, all over Europe. You're an economic professor at University of Missouri, St. Louis, and your book tells the story of interracial adoption in the U.S. and from perspective of a white mother adopts a black son and finds no idea what she's doing, and just having some story, travels, everything else, and some of the things come up. What can people learn? Called Seeking Forgiveness. And before getting to all that, Lea, tell us how you first got started.
How I first got started on this book or writing in general?
Basically just go to the Wayback Machine. So, just how you got started overall, just go way back.
So I've always loved writing. So as you already mentioned, I've got sort of a literary background, and my grandmother in particular, was very well known in Europe, playwright and author, and published books. And so I've always liked writing. I loved reading, and as you said, I sort of published short stories in college, and I planned on becoming an author and a creative writing major early on, but then I got a little bit scared and risk averse that wouldn't be able to feed myself. So I ended up getting a degree in something else, but I've kept writing ever since. And I've written a number of novels, not all of them published. I have 2 published at this point. But this is my second one, and it's close to home, semi-autobiographical memoir about raising my son as a white mother who adopts a black son, and in St. Louis in particular, and has a lot to learn.
And certainly a lot to learn. We'll get more into that. And what was that one precise moment that simply influenced you into what you're doing?
Yeah, so well, what happened was so when my son was younger, he had a hard time going to sleep by himself. He needed either me or my husband, somebody to be sort of cuddling him as he fell asleep. And there was one night when I was cuddling him and he was falling asleep, but I was awake and I was looking out the window. And I'd had so many things happen to us that I would meet friends, at lunch and tell them, and they'd always say, "Oh my God, that was shocking or surprising." And so many people had told me, "You need to write a book about this and some of these stories." So that night, holding my son, I thought, I want to write a book about all these experiences, but also for him. So he always knows that there's this, love in the family and love behind him, supporting him through all these things that he goes through. I mean, I see the book as very much a book about motherhood and the mother-son love, and how, love can really help you get through a lot of the trials that life throws at you.
And what was that moment you simply wanted to adopt your son as well too, and the story behind it as well too, and of course, choosing and everything like that? You can just give us
Yeah.
like a background about the
Yeah.
adoption process and why you chose your son and everything else.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, especially because most people I find assume that we adopted because of infertility reasons, and that's not actually true. My husband and I have been married about 5 years, and we were thinking about having kids, but we were kind of on the fence, to be honest. We couldn't decide. And then a colleague of mine who, like everybody else, assumed we were having infertility problems. She just gave me the number of this women's group one day and said, you should go to this women's group. And because it was a colleague who sort of was higher up than me, I felt like I should do it to tell her I had done it. And I went to this women's group, and women were going around talking about trying to start families, not start families. And one of the women mentioned foster care and adopting through the foster system. And to be honest, it never had occurred to me before. But a light went on. Like the minute she said it, I thought, oh my God, if having a family is not just about me and like what I want and some, ideal of a family that people tell you should have, if it's as much about the child as it is about me and becoming a mother, then I was suddenly on board, and I just really wanted to do it. And so I went home that night and I told my husband, and he's like, okay, and we immediately signed up and became foster parents.
Wow, that's really interesting too. We'll talk about the joys of raising a foster child, of course, the struggles and everything in the book Seeking Forgiveness with Lea Rachel. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SonicWeb Studios is the answer. SonicWeb Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve11 enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and Manils. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com on over 40 podcast platforms, heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music. Also heard on HamiltonRadio.net every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and also on BitChute, Rumble, and a few networks coming soon. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Make sure you do so today. We're here with author and professor Lea Rachel here on the Mike Wagner Show, the book Seeking Forgiveness. And before we talk more about the book, you pretty much travel all over the world as well, too. And besides, you are being economic professor at University of Missouri St. Louis. You traveled to Thailand, Turkey, Peru, China, and all over the world. And tell us about some of your travels and what got you to just do some globetrotting.
So my mother actually, I don't know what you call it, first generation. My mother was born overseas, and my grandparents on my father's side were born overseas. So both my parents spoke as their native tongue different languages, not English. And I grew up very sort of cosmopolitan, hearing other languages, eating other foods. And so I always loved travel. We went as much as we could, although plane fare was very expensive however many years ago, and my family wasn't wealthy, so we didn't go a lot. But I've just always enjoyed adventure, and I love learning about other cultures and other foods and other smells and other places. So when I met my husband, actually my husband and I had deal breakers. And his deal breaker was I couldn't cut my hair really short. He likes hair. My deal breaker was that we had to go on one international trip every year. So we had to figure out a way, as a professor, I get the summers off, so it was easy for me. But we had to figure out a way to, make it so he could go too. And we've tried to go somewhere exciting every year. When my son was first born, we took a pause for a few years when he was a baby. But we try to go every year.
That sounds interesting as well, too. What was your favorite destination in all of travel around the world?
An excellent question. I mean, I do feel like every place is different. I mean, you're almost asking me to like pick amongst my children. That's hard to do.
well, the one that really stands out, maybe the most interesting, the most funny,
Yeah.
or it's just like, most happening and everything like that. So, what really stood out for you, your most favorite?
I mean, what really stood out for me was probably China. So we stayed a number of weeks, and I actually went with my university. So we had somebody who would pick us up every day, and the schedule was I would meet a few professors in the morning, and then they would all take us to lunch. And you get the best food from locals who take you places. So every day a local was taking us to a different place, and they'd order all these amazing dishes that I never would have known to order. And then after they were done, then we had the rest of the day to explore on our own, and we got to do a lot of sightseeing. So it was just a wonderful mix of like meeting local people, eating local food, but also sightseeing, and um, everything about it was just very interesting and very different and very new, and I really really enjoyed it.
What was your favorite sightseeing point that you saw?
When I was in China, you mean?
Yeah, or any, or what was your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, probably some of the big sites. I mean, Tiananmen Square, and I don't know, some of the, I mean, I remember the zoo was interesting. I do remember, this was when they still had a Starbucks in the Forbidden City. They've now gotten rid of that. They don't allow a Starbucks in the Forbidden City anymore.
Ah,
But I
darn, I
remember,
was looking forward to having one with you in China.
well, I remember it was fascinating, and it was a tiny little thing, and my husband and I went, and there was no room, so you had to take your coffee outside, and we were sitting sort of like on the ground drinking this coffee. And my husband's a little bit hirsute, like he's got hairy arms, and which is not, he doesn't look Chinese in any way. Anyway, this little girl came up and just started petting him.
like he was a pet or something. Oh
I
my.
think she'd never seen so much like hair on an arm. I think she. So we still talk about that, having our Starbucks in the Forbidden City and being petted by the locals.
Good thing he didn't get taken to the zoo, though. You think about that. Oh my
Uh,
god. Oh, that's one I gotta remember. I go to Starbucks, I'll have to tell that story.
yeah, it was memorable. It was definitely memorable. And that's what's the joy and fun of traveling, right? And I also feel like that's what the joy and fun of reading books, because you get to see other perspectives. And again, again, one of the impetuses of writing this book was because I would tell people stories about what it was like as a white mother raising a black son, and people would say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that," or "That happened," or "You should write about that." And so I do think the book is really interesting for people who just want to see a different perspective, and different things that go on. It's eye opening.
Mhm. And certainly is eye-opening as well, too. And who are some of your favorite authors and writers growing up?
Oh, some of mine.
Yes.
So when I was much younger, I was really into the Russian authors. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, all the Russian authors. I will say now, I mean, Anne Patchett's a big favorite of mine. Zora Neale Hurston's a big favorite of mine. Toni Morrison, of course. So I've been all over the place.
And sounds like you're all over the place too. And you became an author yourself with Seeking Forgiveness, telling the story of an interracial adoption as well too in the US. And some of the things that you adopt your black son and find out you have no idea what you're doing. And then maybe just some of the pitfalls, the joys and
Yeah,
everything else. And you kind of wonder what you're doing, and maybe just go a bit about a journey. And of course, everybody thinks adoption's an easy process, but not really. And
yeah,
just tell us more about
yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, and so we adopted him before Michael Brown, before George Floyd, before a lot of those things, before Black Panther. Unfortunately, I mean, there's an episode in the book I describe where my son, he's young and he likes superheroes, and he actually asked me, "How come there are no black superheroes?" And it was one
Ooh.
of those moments where I hadn't even thought of it, and I had to come up in the moment with an answer to why there wasn't, as well as not look so surprised. And so that was one moment, but I can tell you another interesting story when my son was about 5 and he had to go to the dentist for the first time.
Hmm.
Um, so I made an appointment, when we walk in, and then the receptionist, she, slides the glass partition open, and she looks at us funny and closes it and goes away and comes back. Finally, she comes back and she says, "I need to see your papers." And I'm
What?
like, I'm like, "I have my insurance card. I have his insurance, my insurance." She goes, "No, no, no, I need to see your papers." And I said, "I'm sorry, I honestly don't know what you're asking me." And she said, "Well, to see the boy, we need some approval from his guardian or his parent or somebody who can authorize care for him." And I was like, "I'm his mother." And she would not have been asking this question if we'd been the same color. If we'd been either both white or both black, she would not be asking this question. And who brings adoption papers to a dentist appointment? So I had nothing to show. and we had to leave. We were forced to leave. And it gets worse. We're in the car, and so I buckle my son up in the back seat, and as I'm buckling up, he's like, "Where was my lollipop?" Because I told him there'd be lollipops, and I'm like, "We'll get you some." And then when I'm done buckling him in, I get in my seat, and then I put the car in reverse to back out of the parking spot, and I turn over, and I lock eyes with my son. And at 5, he asks me, he says, "Mommy, did we have to leave because I'm black?" And I said to him, "No, we had to leave because mommy's white." And the point of the story is I've been trying very hard to make sure he doesn't blame himself for
Hmm.
all of the things that he encounters. And it's hard not to. And those are some of the stories that, again, are in the book that were the impetus for writing it, that are surprising, and let's just say surprising.
Mm. I have to say this about being asked for adoption papers at a dentist. This is the first time I've heard something outrageous like that. And of all the people I had, this is like the most mind blowing I have ever encountered. And thanks for bringing that up. We'll make that aware as well. And also, when it comes to, let's see, with the dentist, is like you figure that, hey, you come in for like, checkup, teeth pull, and all that. Aren't they there to make money or something? It's like, when you told me that story, I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, it's like, don't you want our money like 500,000 bucks or something? I thought I'm just
Well,
scratching
it's
my
funny
head.
because after it was over, I one reported them to the Missouri Dental Board, so I did file something on them, and then I called them back later, and I was just like, "Do you do that for everybody?" And they were like, "Yes." I'm like, "No, you don't. Like, you're just lying." And I said, "Well, what are you worried about? Is there like a epidemic of, and I'm small, of like small white women stealing black children and taking them for free dental care? Like, I mean, like, what are you afraid of?" And they had no good answer. But and we had to go find, you know, and again, the good thing is, so I do feel like if you read this book, it ends hopefully. There is hope and love to this book too. And I will say, in terms of the dentist, the good thing is I had to find somewhere else. And I had to and I realized at that moment too, I really need to make the effort for my son to see good role models, have good experiences. So I ended up, I had to drive very far, but I ended up finding him a black male dentist that he had for years, that Dr. Sam's, we loved him. And that worked out well. That we ended up finding a better dentist, and also a role model for him.
Mm. Now, do you think this epidemic is happening just in St. Louis, or is it just regional wise, or you think it's like nationwide? Is it happening just in St. Louis, that problem, or do you think it's more of a regional thing or a nationwide thing?
The dentist thing, kind of thing.
Or is it like what you encountered as well too? Especially
Well, I
like,
mean, yeah, I will say that it was a few years ago, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, that I saw on Twitter somebody had apparently an interracial family that was trying to board an airplane, and I don't know, fly somewhere, and apparently the stewardess did the same thing to them, like, are you with them? Are you together? And they posted on Twitter like, "Isn't this ridiculous? They're like not letting me board till I prove this, I'm the mother and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh my God, this happens in other areas and in other places." So I'm sure it happens to other interracial families, things like this. I don't know exactly what dentists do in other places, but these sorts of experiences sadly happen, I think, far too frequently to interracial families.
mhm. And you also talked about the lack of black superheroes. You were talking about your son. Were you referring to like the cartoons, the media, or is it like, in history? It's just like, what reference were you referring to, like with black superheroes, like you
Yeah.
see in the cartoons, the
Well,
movies, or going
cartoons,
past
yeah.
history?
I mean, when they're little, for sure. I was talking about the cartoons, and again, before there was the Black Panther movie and Black Panther, I mean, everything's Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern. They're all white. I mean, they're all white.
Mhm.
It's also like, it was really interesting. Somebody had bought my son a puzzle of the U.S. president. So you fit all and then you had this, and it's funny. We put them all, and then of course Barack Obama's at the end, and I'm like, oh look, there's Barack Obama. And my son turned to me and he said, "Where are the girl presidents?"
Girl presidents, it's like, what's next?
I was like, "Baby, you nailed it. You nailed it. It's not there, and that's a problem."
Well, it's getting close. We were close at one point, and tell them there is hope down the road and everything else. I was going to mention too that you're seeing a lot of those black superheroes, and mainly the DC comics. That's been very apparent as well, and some others too. But that's another
Yeah.
subject as well too. That you also took your son out of detention, and you also had I think a couple of instances, and maybe about a few more stories too, that you got your son out of detention, and some other stories, maybe some good coming out of it, not just the dentist or coming out of detention, but also maybe some positive stories you can tell about, like say like a ball game, zoo, or
Oh, for
doctors or anything.
sure. Yeah, so it's funny, it's interesting. Some people have asked me if like I encourage people to adopt the foster system or whatnot. And I will say, however anybody wants to or not want to start a family, it's up to it's up to them. I'm non-judgmental. I don't feel like you should adopt or shouldn't. But I will say, that one beautiful thing about adoption is, at least the adopting family, the child knows you chose them, like you wanted them to be there. And so they very much know they were wanted. I have a good friend who's in her late 40s, and she just found out from her mother that she actually was a mistake, and her mom debated abortion. And so now she's like, what if I weren't here? Like she's having this existential crisis because she's just found out that she wasn't really wanted. And I would just say, one thing about adoption is the child knows that, oh my God, they were wanted, that, you put in years of effort to get them. And I do think that creates something of a bond and something special, that they know how much they were wanted.
Mhm. And do you think the adoption process and adoption, policies and procedure in the US, do you think they're easier now or difficult? And how does the adoption process, compare to other countries, especially those you travel, like, say, with, Thailand, Turkey, Peru, China, Europe, and all that? So it's like,
Yeah.
the adoption policies, procedures, and everything, how to compare back then to now or in the past, and also compare to, other countries?
Yeah. So excellent questions. I will say I am not an adoption expert. So I can definitely speak to our experience, and I can talk a little bit about, the foster care. But like you said, it differs per state, per country. And as well, even adoption differs per state. And it's always changing. I mean, I know that there were some laws like in the 90s that got passed that were influential in how our procedure went. And so I'm really not an expert in adoption. I will say that however you do it and wherever you do it, it's usually not an easy process. It usually takes years, and money and time and all that stuff. But I think that gets back to what I was saying, that it just becomes so worth it. The child you treasure so much. And I will say, the book, I feel like the book I wrote, Seeking Forgiveness, should appeal to people interested in interracial adoption, but also just adoption in general. I mean, I could tell you a story. We had this one incident where um, I mean, my father was actually a Roman Catholic priest, but my mother was Jewish, and I was raised Jewish, so I identify as Jewish.
Mhm.
And I was just telling somebody how I was gonna buy Hanukkah presents for my son's first Hanukkah, and they were like, "Wait, wasn't his birth mother Christian?" And I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, then you have to raise him Christian because his birth mother was Christian. And I remember
Hmm.
thinking, how would that even work if I'm Jewish? Like, and what shocked me, and I feel like this is something that adoptive parents in general, this is what I mean, like the book will really relate, I think, just to adoption in general. Adoptive families, we get this like, are you really a family? Like, I've had the question, did you have any real children too? It's very offensive to, I think, adoptive parents. I mean, we see ourselves as a family like any other family, as permanent as, so if you can't imagine a birth mother raising a child a different religion than themselves, you should not be able to imagine an adoptive mother raising their adoptive child a different religion. Like, it just doesn't even compute in my mind. I was just so shocked I got that question.
Hmm.
But
You do get some interesting questions as well too, and interesting encounters, and I'm learning a lot as well too. And do you think the pandemic has also caused a change in adoption or people adopting? Are they becoming more willing to adopt, or is it like because the pandemic,
yeah.
it's like back off?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question because at first I was reading how there's maybe going to be like less children born because of the pandemic. People are afraid, and maybe they won't have money or something like that. And then maybe there'll be more children because everyone's stuck at home. And so there was just an article I was reading that shows that actually there does look like there's a little bit of a baby bump because of COVID. So I would imagine then there'll maybe be less adoptions necessarily if there's a baby bump. I don't know. I don't know. You ask a very interesting question, and in all honesty, I haven't thought too much about how COVID has affected adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right.
I don't
And,
know.
and what can people learn from the book and learn from the experiences?
Yeah, so like I said, I this is my second published book. My first one was called The Other Shakespeare, and in it I imagine what would have happened if William Shakespeare had born a woman. And
Oh.
so it's set, yeah, it's set in the 1500s. Shakespeare's a woman, and as you can imagine, because women in those days had like no rights, it doesn't end well. It's not necessarily a happy book. I am very happy to say this one is more hopeful. So this book, there it does describe some of the trials and tribulations, a few of which I've just told you now. But it also shows the positive things, and again, it's very much about family love and a mother's love for her son and how much she's willing to fight for him and do for him. And I do believe it ends on a much more hopeful note. Like there's all these life issues that happen in the book, which make it very interesting and riveting, I think, and very fast paced. I've heard many people say they read it in like one day. And
I'd like to do it in like 3/4 of that.
well, I would just like to say, I think it ends on a hopeful note. I mean, almost like you were saying, we now do have more Black superheroes. And so that is a change. And, it does end on a hopeful note. And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And where can we find the book at?
So you can find the book online anywhere, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, a bunch of other online bookstores. It depends whether it's in stock, probably not as much, but you can also read the first 3 chapters for free at my website, www.learachel, so LeaRachel.com. If you go there, you can read the first 3 chapters of The Other Shakespeare, of this book, even of my unpublished books and everything else. And then if you like that, you can then click on the cover and go buy the book.
We will certainly do so. What's coming up for Lea Rachel, the author, in upcoming 22 or 23? We'll find out just 1 minute. Listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for your needs, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's of Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with author Lea Rachel of Seeking Forgiveness after this time out. We're back with author Lea Rachel of Seeking Forgiveness here on the Mike Wagner Show. A great, riveting book. She talked about some experiences and just amazing conversation, everything. What else can we expect in 2022 or 23 and beyond, Lea?
Well, I'm positive I will always be writing. So I do find writing, it's funny, I'm a morning writer. I've heard Toni Morrison and some other writers are like that too. They like to write and see the sunrise. I'm like that too. I wake up at definitely by 5 every morning and sit down, have a cup of coffee and write. So I don't know what my next novel will be. Usually in between novels, I do more short stories and some essays. I know I have another op-ed coming out in the St. Louis Dispatch soon. So I'm not sure what my next novel will be, but I can promise you there will be more.
We will certainly check that out, and certainly looking forward to it. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I would say my mother. So my mother died young, unfortunately. I mean, both my parents passed away pretty young. But my mother, she was a single mother for a while. She was very driven. She was very strong. And she really, I think gave me the confidence to do whatever I felt like I wanted to do and could do. And I just always feel like I still hear her voice and still feel her support. And really, this book, Seeking Forgiveness, while it's about me and my son, it's a little bit again about motherhood, and I draw strength from my mother. I almost feel like it, and I mention my mother in it as well. It's a book, in honor of her and motherhood as well.
And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
About adoption or parenting or writing or
Just in
anything.
general.
Love yourself and try your darndest to love everybody else too.
And that's a very good point as well, too. We're the author, Lea Rachel of Seeking Forgiveness here on the Mike Wagner Show. Lea, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you in soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. And once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
www.learachel, LeaRachel, no spaces.com. You can find everything there. You can buy the book at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and a bunch of other places, but you can keep up with my blog and my other writings at www.learachel.com.
We'll certainly check that out. Once again, Lea, a very big thank you for your time. You've been totally amazing. Looking forward to it soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love having you back and wish you all the best. And Lea, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.